Rice.
Thank you. Thanks. So I want to return to the issue that I was raised earlier about the Hooded Plovers at the Belfast Coastal Reserve near Warrnambool in southwest Victoria. So where we, in our discussions, the issue of whether there should be a referral to under the EPIBC Act for the horse training activities, and we've now got a draft management plan. So how the department is engaging with that draft management plan, as to whether that through having a draft management plan that it's triggering potentially a referral under the EPIBC Act.
So, Senator, in and of itself, a draft management plan wouldn't trigger a referral. So I understand that the draft management plan is currently on exhibition through till, I think, late March. So the department is currently reviewing that draft management plan and will consider whether or not it will make comments on the plan.
So would you say that through having a management plan, and particularly where, the draft management plan says horse training in the reserve has been highlighted as an important activity for the regional economy. The plan sets out an approach for horse training that balances support for the racing industry, equity of access for all trainers, and ensuring adequate protection for cultural and natural values. And it talks about the specific conditions that are going to be put in place to manage commercial horse training on key beaches. Given all that's laid out in the draft plan, would you agree that that moves the actions of trainers away from just being individual horse trainers to ongoing use by horse trainers?
So I can't comment on the plan specifically at this point. As I said, it's on exhibition and the department's currently considering it. But one measure could be that by putting in place a management plan that also complements the licence that the Victorian government's also got in place on the beach, it could be one option that the Victorian government is trying to manage the impact so it avoids a significant impact. But as I say, we haven't done a thorough review of that plan yet, so it's still too early for us to comment on it.
But even if the Victorian government was attempting to avoid those impacts, there would need, however, if there were an ongoing action and it had cumulative impacts, there would need to be a referral under the EPIBC Act, wouldn't there? Would not there?
So the trigger is the same as I've outlined earlier. The management of the beaches in Victoria is primarily a responsibility for Victoria. The Commonwealth Government gets involved in a very narrow subsection, and that is where there are significant impacts on matters of national environmental significance. Yes. And so the proposal that's being put forward by the Victorian Government, as I said, we're currently in the process of reviewing that plan. But if through that management there is likely to be a significant impact on a matter of national environmental significance, then yes, the Commonwealth would take an interest. However, if through that management plan the Victorian Government is seeking to minimise or avoid impacts to the plover, then it wouldn't fall under the remit of the Commonwealth Government.
How do you make that judgment as to whether it's sufficient or whether you need federally to assess it, given that you've got a threatened species that's there?
Well, as I say, it's probably too early for us to determine that. We're going through the draft management plan while it's currently on exhibition. But there are assessment guidelines, and I refer to my colleagues about how you would come to that conclusion.
So, Senator, there are significant impact guidelines published, available on our website in relation to how proponents, as you're aware, the EPIBC Act is a self-assessment methodology. So if anyone proposing to take an action or to manage an action, as is the case in this instance, they need to arrive at their own conclusion about whether or not to refer that action. Now, if a proponent was to refer an action to us, then clearly that puts that action into the referral and assessment pathway. Many proponents choose not to refer an action to us because they believe there will not be a significant impact under the Act.
So if the Victorian Government chose to not refer it to you, but other stakeholders felt that it should be referred to you, what would be the process to have that decision of the Victorian?
Absolutely. So it's open to anyone to raise with the department their view that an action is either underway or about to be taken that they consider may be significant. That would be raised with us. It would be referred to our compliance staff, who would review the action to make a decision about whether or not they felt it should be referred, they would have a conversation with the proponent, the taker of the action. As Mr. Barker pointed out just earlier, usually we would have a conversation with that person to say whether or not, if our compliance staff had determined there may be a significant impact, then we may ask the proponent to refer the action, or in extreme cases seek to call in the action as an action that required assessment and approval.
Right, so you do have the capability to call it in if the proponent wasn't referring it?
Yes, that capability is provided for under the EPIBC Act.
Can I just confirm, so just in terms of where it currently stands, I mean, when we were last discussing this, Ms Collins, your view was that the horse training was individual actions and so didn't qualify as being a referable actions under the EPIBC Act.
And that's how it's determined under the Act.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but now that we have a draft management plan, would you agree that we are now in a situation where they are not individual actions, that they are actually an ongoing suite of actions that would have cumulative impact?
It's probably too early for us to say that, but it's not necessarily that that's the conclusion. So the Victorian government is setting out a plan of management for the beach, which I imagine would cover a range of similar national park nature reserve management activities. As I say, it's too early for us to comment on whether it is an activity that that triggers the Act in the first place and then therefore needs assessment under the Act.
Right. I mean, to me it seems fairly clear cut, and referring back to there was a federal court case with the impact of vehicles on the beach in the Tarkine that said that because essentially this was planned to be managed by the Tasmanian government, that there was a cumulative impact, and so therefore it should be referred, it should come under the operations of the EPIBC Act. It seemed a fairly similar situation here. I mean, obviously different impacts, but you have something that was once considered as individual impacts, but now we have a management plan that's managing those. In itself seems to show that it's having there would be cumulative impacts.
Senator, in the Tasmanian four-wheel drive track case, the court did determine, as you're suggesting, but there was also a suggestion that the action was likely to have a significant impact, and the Tasmanian government indeed made the consideration as the proponent, and as the proponent decided to refer the action to the Commonwealth, and it's under assessment currently.
Yes, I mean,
so
clearly
that's
right, and whether
works.
it's significant or not, obviously you need to discuss. But what I'm getting at is that the last time we discussed this, the position of the department was still that they were individual actions. What I want to get some clarification of is, because we've now got a management plan, it seems that it's pretty clear cut that they're not just individual actions anymore. They are now having a cumulative impact.
Senator, I would just respond to that by saying that for each of the trainers, they would still be an individual action. You can't hold each trainer responsible for something other trainers do, but from the perspective of the owner of the management plan, it's a holistic, the management plan covers all of the action.
And so it is a management plan covering all of the actions that would be having cumulative impact.
Well, the management plan that would be having an impact in relation to all of the activities covered by that plan.
Senator, I think I would just summarise it. We very much clearly understand where the thrusting of your question and the key point on cumulative impacts that you're raising. I think we have to pick this up as part of our consultation with the Victorian government with their draft management plan and figure out what the appropriate landing is on this question.
Okay.
You're raising a hypothesis which has some validity, and we need to explore that with them.
In conclusion then, could I clarify that the department is going to engage with the draft management plan, or you are still considering whether you're going to?
No, so we'll look at the draft management plan, yes.
And would it be that the department do you put in a submission to it, or do you just look at it and advise the Victorian government as to whether a referral is necessary?
So we will review it from the lens of the Commonwealth Government's role under the EPIBC Act, and if it's appropriate, we would look at making comments and engaging with the Victorian Government.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.